Hey, so are you curious what a year of no sugar actually looks like? Because I did it, the whole shebang, for over a year. A year and 4 months to be precise. I don't know if this is sad, but it was one of my greatest achievements. So let's talk why. What I felt, what I feel now, and then the pitfalls and celebrations. First, so let's knuckle down on sugar. So they say that if sugar was discovered today, that it should be recategorized as a drug. When sugar hits our brain receptors, it triggers a dopamine response, which is why it's incredibly addictive. So if you listen to Jodie Stranzis Law recent TED Talk, Sugar is Not a Treat, she states that according to the World Health Organization, 420 million people have type 4 diabetes, and that is literally just rising. And for America alone, if their eating habits do not change in the next few decades, you're looking at 1 in 3 people having type 4 diabetes. 29 years ago, Carolyn Hart, who is the author of the book Sugar-Free Baking, You Can Have Your Cake and Eat It, she said it was not uncommon for her to eat half a cheesecake for breakfast, a full packet of biscuits for lunch, and then she wouldn't just have a little piece of chocolate, she would eat the whole bar, the whole flipping waffle. So then she was pre-diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and it really shook her up because she saw what life could look like if that diagnosis came to pass. So she went completely cold turkey on sugar 29 years ago. Fast forward to now, I mean, my gosh, a 70-year-old bombshell who attributes her health and her young looks to the fact that she cut sugar 29 years ago. She is glowing on the inside and the outside. That diagnosis never came to pass, and just look at her. Oh my gosh. Don't we all want to look like her when we're 70? And then there was a gentleman called Fred Hatfield who was diagnosed with cancer in 2012 and given 3 months to live by 3 separate doctors. And around that time he discovered the low sugar ketogenic diet, and thank goodness he did, because now, years later, he is completely free of cancer. He doesn't have it anymore. And then my own mother. So she had candida. Candida feeds on sugar, also stress, which can be processed by the body as sugar. And she got seriously ill, and for 10 years she really struggled and she wasn't sure what she had. And she was breaking out in lots of sores all over her body. She was low in energy. She said that she could only take us to school, and then she'd come back and she'd just lay on the floor and just crash out. Just said that was all the energy she had for the day. At one point she was even so low on energy that she was in a wheelchair. Anyway, she changed her diet, she cut sugar out, and now today she is fully healthy and she is right on the right track. So what's my journey with sugar? Well, let me tell you, I was never one to pass up a highly processed sugary treat if it was offered. If there was a plate of cookies or sugar in a room, guess where my hand was? And by most people's standards, I ate very well for the rest of the week, i.e. stocking my fridge and my pantry, but I wouldn't deny myself those weekly snacks of chocolate, crisps, sweets, ice cream, baked goods. So fast forward to 2017 and I got ill. I was in a highly stressful job. This meant that the candida bacteria in my gut, by the way, it's in every gut, you have it in your gut, and the candida in my gut morphed into a baddie and started to rule the roost and started quickly growing out of control, causing leaky gut, many food intolerances, bloating, irritability, mood swings and mild depression. Now, knowing what happened to my mum previously, I knew where this road was leading and I was going to cut it off now, and I would do whatever it took. I learnt that candida feeds on sugar to survive, and also many types of sugar. So I literally went cold turkey. I'm not just talking added sugar, I'm literally talking cellulose, glucose, sucrose, fructose, well, most fructose. I had a handful of berries every day. I also would have the occasional cake made out of random ingredients and stevia, but that was it. I didn't have any honey, any maple syrup, I pretty much cut out all grains, and also some starchy veg that converts to sugar when your body breaks it down. I remember the lead up to me deciding to quit sugar, and it was a process of saying goodbye, letting go, mourning. And I went and I bought a large chocolate bar, which I think I even spoke to it. I think I said goodbye, and then I consumed the whole thing. And it was just this, I don't know, it was a process of just being like, I know this is the last one. And so there's a clear defined line, and I did find that very helpful actually, having that boundary defined for me, otherwise you just don't know when you're going to start. So, and then also I found when I was driving along down the high street. I was looking out at McDonald's and KFC, and in my heart I was saying goodbye. I think there's something to be said for that though, because you realise the weight to the decision that you're making, and the fact that you are taking it so seriously shows that what you're about to do, that you're going to have the tenacity to go for it. Side note, if you have candida, you're more likely to have more sugar cravings than the average person. Because candida feeds on sugar, candida can actually give you the cravings, and it's just it crying out and screaming from your gut saying, give me sugar because I'm dying. And you're like, that's exactly what we're planning on doing. So you resist, and you resist again, and bit by bit they die, and good riddance. So, the part that you're all waiting for, what were the results that I found after that year and 4 months? Well, I can tell you that my skin was amazing. Even after a month and a half, I had people telling me that it just looked so clear, so healthy. I rarely had a spot, if at all. I can tell you that steadily over time I gained more energy, which was a really big deal, because at the time I was sometimes just doing a little trip out to town, which is, by the way, is a 10-minute walk, and just collecting some organic meat and walking home. And by the time I was home, I was huffing and puffing. I didn't have any energy. I would just flop onto the sofa and I wouldn't move for a little bit just to regain some energy, and that's not normal. Over time, I'm glad to say that my energy is back to normal, which is completely down to changing my diet, and it's powerful. My emotions became more manageable. Before, I would be very irritable. I had this mild depression. It just made life that little bit darker. I was able to think more with a rational head. I also lost weight very quickly, within possibly even a month. So for me, it didn't actually look very healthy because I had a lot of other stuff going on, as opposed to just cutting out sugar. As you know from my story, I was killing candida, and so that is part of my process. So I think that I also could have been losing weight because I was just eating veg and meat, really. So what were the difficulties? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. In the beginning, it was really hard to cut out sugar, like right from the offset. I was having dreams, sweet dreams, where literally I would have a shopping basket in hand, I'm walking up the supermarket aisle, I'm perusing all of the many forms of chocolate bars and thinking, oh gosh, yes, I could do with some of that. And I was just loading up my basket. I'm talking everything I saw I loved in the basket, it went. And I wasn't even at the end of the aisle when I started cracking them all open and just stuffing my face with it. No shame, I didn't feel shame at all. And that was my first sweet dream. And then I think it was a week or two later, I had another dream where I ate an ice cream. Well, I started to eat the ice cream and I thought, oh, this is life. And then I realised, and my rational brain said, Jen, spit it out. You should not be eating that stuff, spit it right out now. It's literally how I heard it in my head, which I think is amazing. Clearly my rational head was switched on and it just showed how serious I was. For months it was difficult for me to watch people eat things that I couldn't eat. But you know what, it does get easier. But initially it was very hard, I'm not going to lie to you. I remember being at a party and there was some beautiful food laid out behind me on the bar, and I literally did turn my back to it because I just thought, no, I can't be looking at that stuff. And I had a friend come up to me and say, Jen, would you like one of the cakes? And I just, oh no, I'm fine, thank you, I'm fine. And they said, okay, well, would you like one of these drinks? I was like, oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. She said, well, at least have some fruit. And there was this beautiful fruit basket made up. Eventually I just said, I'm just completely off all sugar. And it stopped. But my gosh, talk about resisting temptation. Over time, that kind of stuff got easier. I've been at multiple buffets with all the food you could ever want. And, you know, I can't really have much but veg and meat. And I still had a good time. The other difficulty is some people will judge you as being difficult or dramatic. I've certainly had that, or people silently judging you that you can just feel it. I think because it does become difficult when you can't eat out and you know, you're making all these different dietary decisions that does look a bit awkward when you're speaking to a waiter or things like that, but ultimately you have to put your health first, and sugar is a gradual death sentence. It is killing us, so it's worth taking seriously. I think one of the biggest difficulties for me was finding that almost everything in my local supermarket had sugar in it. I remember the really sobering day when I went into the supermarket to do my new food shop, and it was long. I was there for hours because I'm checking the back of all these ingredients and just seeing sugar in everything. If it says cellulose, sucrose, glucose, it's basically smuggling in sugar. So I was in wide eyes open, seeing sugar everywhere and just thinking, my gosh, I can't have any of this. And so the realization dawned on me that I need to be cooking everything from scratch. Now, this took so much of my time, and that was literally one of the most painful things. Honestly, systematic planning really saved me. I've got a video on meal planning, so do check that out. Having everything set so I knew when I was making it. Also, food can become pretty boring in the beginning, and you have to think of new creative ways of cooking vegetables. Vegetables are so good for us anyway. We are made to live on a high vegetable diet, and so it was a good thing. Eventually, it just, in the beginning, you are retraining the way that you've done life. The good news is that your taste buds do change over time. It's true, I can attest to it, that, you know, over time, I found that I didn't really crave all these sugary foods that I did before. I didn't really actually see much of the appeal in it. I would see sweets that before I would be all over. I'm talking like my face in the bowl. And now I would look at it and just think, my gosh, I'm just seeing you for what you really are. It changes your mind. But with the taste buds, I would try things like carrot, and I could taste the sweetness of a carrot. Previously, I could not tell you that a carrot was sweet at all. When I had an apple for the first time, my eyes were opened. I mean, I always saw apples as sour, but actually I was tasting the sweetness, the natural sweetness of a green apple. So at that stage, life began to bloom a little bit and open up and not be so much of a horrific experience, you know, where, you know, I'm deprived of everything I want. There are some nice things that you can enjoy. Now, at this point, I just want to address the whole issue of, do you go cold turkey or do you just limit yourself to a small amount of sugar? So they say in a day that we should be having 3 teaspoons of sugar and a man should be having 6. By the way, if you were to have a can of Coke, you're already having 11 teaspoons of sugar. So that is above what is safe. And you think most people would just be having a can of Coke as a starter, and then they'll be having a pizza, and then they'll be having some sweets, and then they might be having that cake. It's very easy for this to be getting out of control. Now, I think the issue with limiting yourself is you have no clear boundaries. Now, I can speak about this because I've done both. So initially, for my year and 4 months, as I've told you, I was strict. Down the line, I did not have any sugar. And you know what? I am grateful for that because it made it so much easier for me. It's just when it's off the table, you don't mess with the idea in your head, you don't torment yourself. It's just over. This is the way it is. A year and 4 months later, when my energy was back to a normal level, that was when I started to reintroduce some sugar. So first of all, I reintroduced coconut blossom sugar, which isn't actual sugar. There's still a debate going on with it, but it's not, I don't think it's the same thing. After that, I had these dark chocolate bars, which come pre-packaged in little amounts, so you can do portion sizes. Now that one did actually have some sugar in it, but you know, in relation to what I would have previously eaten, really not so much, especially when I would have eaten a whole chocolate bar, and now I'm limiting myself to like this. Seriously, 1 or 2. And again, there lies the issue. Is it 1? Is it 2? I've certainly had that conundrum going on in my mind because I was only having it on Saturday as a treat, my little bar of chocolate, and that then turned into, well, I'll have 1 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday, you know, because then that's really not much. Or, oh, you know what, I'll have my little coconut blossom one because that's not really fully sugar, and then I might have one of the other ones with it because then it should equal it out. And it does get so hazy. My advice will always be, set yourself to the task, and it will get easier. The other thing to note is that since I reintroduced some forms of sugar, I also changed a few things in my diet. I started to eat nuts. My skin actually visibly now looks worse than it did before. I am regularly having breakouts. For the last year and 4 months, that was non-existent. I had beautiful skin. And not only do I have breakouts on my face, but I've got them breaking out other places as well, which is so not normal. So I can't really explain to you why that is. I can only imagine that that is reintroducing some forms of sugar in, and it could also be the fact that I introduced some other foods that maybe my body is having a tolerance to, and that might be coming out in my skin. I'm just giving you all the facts. So in summary, yes, there's been some challenges, there's also been some huge triumphs. I have so much energy now, I feel alive, and so I wouldn't look back. I will always be limiting my sugar intake, and it's just a new lease of life for me. It really does change your mindset to actually live it. I really hope this has been helpful, and don't forget that I do videos every week, so tune in for your healthy habits and lifestyle tip, and I'll see you next week. Bye!